that time of the year, 50% of people's favorite time, 50% of people's worst time in football. It's the transfer window, which opens on the 15th of June, so not far away. And clubs are already busy getting to work on their deals. Anyone who thinks clubs that will not be doing any work until the 15th, they'll be left behind. So plenty of clubs are already busy. Leeds say they get their transfer targets lined up at least 6 months in advance. And the ones that we're going to talk about today and how transfer talk is going to work, at least in the initial part of transfer window, is going to be probably just weighing up whether a story is even true or not. That's the fundamental basics of this. The three players that we're talking about today are Georginio Rutter, Harvey Elliott, and Ladislav Krejci. Now, the reason they're in this and they weren't part of the news is because they don't come from what you classify as overly credible sources. Some of them not credible at all. So there was no point in putting it in the news and just bunging it in there. We'll stick it here separately. Those who are not interested in the more speculative rumours, thanks for joining me so far. I'll see you on Monday morning. And that's what we're doing. We're going to go through this and I'm going to break it down to certain areas that we'll go through together. There's going to be there's the source first. Who's linked them? Are they credible? The second part is going to be, are there any issues or potential issues that could be that could either stop a deal or make a deal not make sense in the wider scheme of things when it comes to Leeds United? The next part of that will be, do they fit with Leeds and do they make Leeds United a better side? And that's going to be important. And the reason that's important is because all of this has to be taken in the grander context of what Parag Marathe has said in his end of season address to the fans and the new squad cost ratio model landscape. Leeds United can spend 85% of their football related revenue. Commercial revenue is out the window on this one. It's just what comes in from a football perspective. So that's where this is going to be interesting. Now, there's some commercial revenue does leak into footballing, shirt sponsors, that kind of stuff. It's related to football, but any non-related stuff is not part of this. So 85% of that can be spent on players' wages, agents' fees, transfers, manager salaries, etc. Right? That's the context. And that's important because as you start to go through this, you've got to think of what Leeds' budget could be. Parag Marathe said that the new SCR model will be a little bit tighter this year than it was last year under PSR. We've talked about this during the week at debt to debt. And basically that lines up. It's just going to be a bit tighter. Leeds will have to make some sales and make some money on the players on the fringes in order to have that extra few pence and pounds to spend coming into this transfer window. That's the context. And that's why we're doing it in the way we're doing it. It's not to be pedantic, it's not to be overly structured, but it is just to say, before we talk about this player, does he fit? Does the cost work? And does it fit the overall picture of what Leeds United need? Now, that's the next part to talk about. What do Leeds need coming into this summer transfer window? Well, the foundations of this squad, I think, are very, very good. I think if you ignore parts of the first half of the season where we were figuring out what our best system was and who the better players were in that side, I think you've got a lot of that work done already, which means you can focus on the front areas and filling a couple of the gaps that you've got or upgrading positions that maybe you can get marginal gains in next season. So that's that. So the general thought process, appears to be Leeds are looking for another number 9, probably number 10, maybe a box-to-box midfielder, a centre-back, left-back cover, and maybe a goalkeeper. There's a couple of maybes in there. A lot of people reckon 4 to 5 players as the main body of the work that they want to get done. The rumoured transfer kitty is £100 million. That's rumoured. It's not been confirmed by anybody. It is just what's been thrown out there from the media, and that's what it is. Also, to make it very clear, none of these stories are mine. I'm not a journalist. I aggregate news, which means I find the news from everywhere else and put it together in one place. So I'm not a journalist, so this is not my information. I'll tell you who said it. It's up to you to decide whether you believe it or not. I'm not your mother. I'm not going to tell you what to believe. You can pick that out yourself. So, there's the ground rules of transfer talk. When we get into the more group-based podcast style transfer talks, once we get into serious business time, that's when we'll start to talk about more detail on players that are very concretely being linked with Leeds United. Right now, we're still very much in shortlist territory. There's a couple to start off with. We'll start off with Georginio Rutter, which is the first one that popped up during the week. Right, so the first part, the source. Who has linked Georginio Rutter with Leeds and are they credible? This one has come from the fan forum site Wacko. Now, I will say before anyone says forums aren't credible, there's a couple of people that have been on that site Wacko who have gotten some transfers absolutely bang on the money over the last couple of years. Most people who read the forum know the people that we're talking about. there is some level of credibility for some accounts there, the same way there are some levels of credibility to journalists and less to others. So that's how it worked. So I won't dismiss it completely out of hand, but we'll talk about it in a more rational, logical perspective. So, linked by Wacko, and the story around this goes as follows. Brighton are considering allowing Georginio Rutter to leave this summer, and Leeds are said to be interested in bringing him back to the club. Now, park all of the emotional sides, whether you love him and think he's a fun player, because I do, I really always love Georgie, or whether you're still a bit angry that he left and you're not sure about the circumstances around why he left and he could have turned down a move based on his activation being activated or his clause being activated. Park all of that and look at this from just a logical perspective. The issue here is pretty clear. Brighton have got a history of selling players for a big profit. They don't buy in expensive, like they bought Georgie for a lot of money. What was 35, 40 million pounds they bought him for? They're not going to sell him on the cheap. He's got 3 years left on his deal, and he's not exactly been a dud in the Premier League. He's had 2 relatively decent seasons for Brighton, given the amount of minutes that he has played. Not the games, the minutes that he has played. So there is that. They won't be selling him at a loss in this situation, or whatever the book value of Georgie is right now after 2 years worth of installments being paid to Leeds. So they're not going to sell him on the cheap. So the valuation of the player versus the output is going to be a talking point on this. If you look at his G&A over the last couple of seasons, has he improved since he's gone to the Premier League versus the last time we had him in the Premier League? And the answer is probably yeah. Not to the same level of what he produced in the Championship. It shouldn't be. They're miles apart in terms of quality for the most part. This season, he's got 6 G&A, 3 goals and 3 assists, but he's only played 1,982 minutes. You compare that to Brendan Aronson, who has 9 G&A this season, so he has outperformed Georgie. He played 2,752. Similar amount of games, completely different in terms of the amount of time they were on the pitch for. So that's a factor as well, a contributing factor. Last year, his first season in the Premier League, 8 G&A, so a better season last season. 5 goals, 3 assists, 28 games, so less games, better G&A. And the season before that, he was with Leeds. 23 goals and assists over the course of the season. 7 goals, 16 assists for Leeds. Again, the step up is different, and we know that. But he was played as a prominent number 10 for Leeds, played far more minutes. At Brighton, he's been played centrally, he's been deeper, he's played out in the wide areas as well. So he's played in a variety of different positions, sometimes up front, which, as we all know, probably isn't his best position. So that's that part. Next bit. Would he fit and would he make Leeds United better? I think, of course, he would fit like a glove. Assuming one thing, that Daniel Farke plays the same system next season that he played this year, and he could resist the temptation not to go back to a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1. If he sticks with the 2 just behind the 1, then Georginio Rutter on one side and Noah Okafor on the other side, Brendan Aronson in that mix as well. That could work out quite well for all the players involved in that, assuming he wants to play that system and assuming he's a player that he even wants in the first place. Does he improve Leeds? Almost certainly, in terms of the quality that he has, the unpredictability that he brings, that natural creative flair. He'd be played as a second 10, again, if that system is played. More to his strings of his bow than where he plays necessarily always with Brighton. So there is that. But then you go to the point around this, which is the strategic element of this. Going back to Parag Marate's statement, and we'll keep going back to that because that's the benchmark on this. They said strategic, patient, and a deliberate transfer window, right? Strategic plan-wise, is there better value for a player that can deliver that G&A, specifically the assists on this, on the continent? Is there someone else who you could bring in for less money? Let's just say a Romano Schmid, for example, of Werder Bremen, who was linked in January. Not saying it is him, but take him, for example. An Edward Spurgeon, who I just like a lot. I'm sorry, but I do. Not coming to Leeds, but you know what I mean. A lot more output there, probably costs a lot less money because of the UK tax that has to be brought into consideration here, and the fact that Brighton don't sell players for less than their market value. They always tend to get decent sales, and they'll need to under the SDR model as well. So it's not just Leeds buying, it's the selling club as well. So there is that. For me, I don't know about this one. I have asked a couple of journalists who would be far more knowledgeable than me, and they've said the same thing. Doesn't make sense. 3 years left on his deal. Would be a very expensive transfer. Would be a huge chunk out of what Leeds United's budget would be that needs to stretch. And again, when you go back to last summer, huge amount of money doesn't guarantee equality. We got some really good players in last year for not a huge amount of money. Anton Stack, 18 million quid. If you get 3 more of him, that's a really good team. Do you know what I mean? So that is a massive part. Just because it's 30 million quid, we don't have to spend 30, 40, 50 million pounds on a player. Liverpool wasted tons of money last year. They're not the only club. Loads of clubs wasted money last year. Chelsea. It's about getting it right. and getting the right value to fit this, to get as many players as we can in to raise the floor and the ceiling of the squad this year. The next player then to talk about is Harvey Elliott. Again, haven't covered this one all week, and I will tell you for cause why, as my wife would say. The source on this is Football Insider, who are an incredibly unreliable source of information when it comes to transfers. I don't know any exclusive that they've put out related to Leeds that ever turned out to be a player that signed for Leeds. 3 years ago, we did a video on why we don't cover Football Insider news on the channel, because we gave you a list of incomings and outgoings of players that they listed, and none of them happened at the end of a transfer window. So we just don't cover Football Insider at all. It's an easy one to stick Leeds' name along it. It gets clicks. They seem to just put Leeds' name to everybody because of that. So for that reason, I don't believe there's an ounce of truth in this one. And I could be wrong. This could be a case where they've swung for the fences and got it absolutely nailed on. But I'm not sure about it. And again, we'll go into this in a bit more detail. The potential issue with this one just comes down to games. Lack of games over the last 2 years. And it's not just at Villa. Villa was a special case, and we'll talk about that. There's a question mark to be asked here. Villa brought him in last summer on loan with an obligation to buy him for £35 million should he hit X amount of games. I believe it was 10 games. It could be slightly more than that. And whatever happened in the first couple of weeks, Unai Emery decided, we're not doing this. He's not playing any more games, because if he hits that number, we have to pay that money, and we're not paying that. There was confusion behind the scenes at Aston Villa if he was a Monchi signing or if he was an Unai Emery signing. My brother's a Villa fan, so I get a bit of insight into this. We talked about it when we were actually at the Villa Leeds game this year. And it appears that Emery has all of the control when it comes to football-related matters at the club. Monchi left the club, and Emery's in charge of everything. And Emery's decided this is not a player for us. Doesn't make us better, or at least not for that amount of money, and I want to spend that money next summer somewhere else, which is this summer. So they backed away from this, and he's had a shockingly bad season. Not from his own fault, literally just because of the circumstances he found him in. So this season he's played 5 games in the Premier League for Aston Villa, started 1. He played 4 games in Europe, also started 1. The question here is, why has Emery decided this is not a player that we want to have in our squad? Again, given he's more games to play, you can use him as a rotational option. Doesn't want to play him at all. You've got to ask that question. He's seen something that just made him think, no, he's not for us. And he's not worth us putting ourselves in a position where we pay this kind of money. But taking Villa as a very special case then. Let's talk about his time at Liverpool. The season before that, at Liverpool, he played 18 games in the Premier League. But he only started 2 of them as well. He got 1 goal and he got 2 assists. At that point, everyone was talking about him being an exciting young player. He was going to come through the Liverpool youth system. He was starting to come into the age group where he was going to start demanding more football or wanting to need more football. And that's when they loaned him out to Aston Villa. But again, not a huge amount of starts, not a huge amount of involvement for Liverpool. And that was a Liverpool side that was surrounded by quality and won the Premier League. And it's always said, if you're of a certain level of player and you surround them with better players, you get a better output from those players. So he wouldn't be doing that at Leeds. He wouldn't be coming into a title-winning side. He'd be coming into a side that would be looking to compete in the middle bracket of the league. So there's that. Then there's the fee. Villa wanted £35 million for him last summer. Apparently, they want £25 million for him this summer. Is he worth £25 million? Again, given the fact that we've got a strategic, patient and deliberate summer ahead of us and a transfer budget within this SCO model, that we've got to be careful about every penny that we spend. We've got to get guaranteed quality for money and an output. And again, is there better quality on the continent? Would you buy Harvey Elliott if you didn't know his name and you bought him from a different club outside of the UK in mainland Europe, and you looked at this and went, 9 games in total this season, 2 starts. Last season, 2 starts, 18 games in total, 25 million quid. I think a lot of people would say you'd be mad. Now, that's not to say that there's not a quality player in there. There are elements of Harvey Elliott that I quite like. I just don't know, when you're looking at it from a Leeds perspective, does it make sense for Leeds? Next part then is, would he fit and would he make Leeds better? Possibly he would fit, but I think the price tag is does he improve us that much more? You know, is he better than what we've already got? Is he better than what we can get for less money? And then that money can be used elsewhere. And again, if we want to get more quality in, adding up the millions of quid across the board over the course of the season could equal a whole new player. So there is that. And again, I go back to, what's the real reason the Villa decided to pull the plug on this? What did Emery see that he didn't like about him? I don't know. So for me, Liverpool won't sell him that cheaply. 25 million quid for a player that's barely kicked the ball this season is a lot of money, I would imagine. I don't know. And again, the source on this one for me doesn't hold water. But we'll again, you never know. I could be wrong, and I'm okay if I'm wrong. I never mind being wrong. We'll see. Let's talk about the next one. This one came out a while ago, and it came just after we played Wolverhampton Wanderers, when he got into a little bit of a tiff with Brendan Aronson, and Brendan pushed him, and Ladislav Krejci hurt his little neck and went down like a sack of spuds. They linked him with a move to us at that moment in time, so the Leeds had already even reached out to just sort out whether the player would be interested in a move to the club. Today, they've linked him again with a move to Leeds United. They say Leeds plan to make a move for Ladislav Krejci. In fact, they've already got it underway, apparently, if that's to be believed. And he was one of Wolverhampton Wanderers' better players last season. That should be said, or this season, last season, wherever we are right now. But you know what I mean. So there is that to be said. The issue with this is probably already been fixed, but there's a price tag issue here. He is on loan he's on loan from Girona, but there's an obligation that's already been activated within that deal. It's £26 million that Wolves have paid for him. He becomes a Wolves player. Wolves are going to sell him. They have to sell him from a financial perspective, but Wolves are not willing to take a cut on what they are spending on him, and they want to recoup the entire amount of money in the sale. So they want £26 million for Ladislav Krejci. So there's that part. We'll come back to it. Would he fit? Yeah, I think he would. Left-sided centre-back, 6'3" in height, 27 years of age, good with the ball at his feet, and very dangerous from set pieces. You go through the 49ers Enterprises normal model, tick, tick, tick. There's a couple of guarantees there. Over 6 foot, 27 years of age, available. So there is that. So that point, yeah, I would say. Does he improve us is an interesting question, because I think there's more context needed in this situation as well. And it comes down to, what is Leeds' actual plan with Pascal Struijk? Final year of his contract. Are they keeping him? Are they selling him? If they are selling him, and it's an if, because it is an if, are they bringing in more money for him than they're paying for Krejci, if that's even true? Again, these are all if they're true. None of these might be true. But if that is the case, are you making money on him? If you are making money on him, then maybe it does make financial sense to go elsewhere then. You break Krejci's fee over a couple of years, you got a few quid to spend. Maybe it makes a bit more sense. Who's the better option is the other part to this as well. Who's the better footballer? I think Pascal Struijk is probably a far better footballer. He's got the odd mistake in him, but then so is Krejci. I've seen Krejci play against Ireland with Czech Republic. I think he's Czech Republic, yeah. And he was very good in that match as well. Both matches against Ireland. Really, really strong. Very, very good. Again, has a long throw as well. So another set piece master there. And he's very good at attacking corner kicks as well. So there's a lot of good stuff about Krejci. He's a left-footed centre-back. So you are looking at a direct competition with Pascal Struijk. And if you keep both of them, if you bring him in and you keep Pascal Struijk, is Pascal Struijk going to sign a new deal at the club with 1 year left, or are you boxing yourself into a corner? So that's the issues there for me. Also, Brentford and Crystal Palace have also been labelled as having some level of interest in the player as well, so he could go to either of them. And again, it comes back to the strategic conversation as well, and value for money, £26 million. So if, argument's sake, hypothetical situation, you were to bring in Harvey Elliott and Ladislav Krejci, just two players, it's going to cost you, if the numbers are right, £51 million. It could be half or over half of your transfer budget for this summer. So does that make sense? Again, or can you go to the continent and get a better deal? Are there free transfers available like Danilo Doki, but he is a right-sided centre-back? Is there a left-sided centre-back out there? Can Leeds get some smart deals done as well? So there's that. So yeah, they're the ones that we didn't cover in the news because, again, as I say, questionable sources, not to say wacko or wrong, it just depends on who it comes from. Football Insider, I just don't cover it. And then Graham Bailey and Team Talk, hit and miss. Hit and miss. So you can decide what you think on this. You can let me know in the comments. Would you like any of these players? What you think of these? Can you get better value? Are they worth the fees being discussed? And again, Leeds don't have untapped money to spend this summer. They are shopping within a budget because of SCR. How do you approach this? How many players do you think Leeds need? What are the key positions? And do these fit any of those models? Are we being too sentimental about Georginio Rutter? Probably. Is there better out there for less money? You can let me know. And again, we'll do these over the course of the season. Now there's no matches on a Saturday. And we'll just see where we go week to week. And again, if this is not your thing, no problem at all. I'll see you in the news for the more, slightly more credible stuff that we'll try and find over the next couple of weeks before the window opens, and we'll see what can happen. Don't be surprised we see a couple of deals get done before the window actually physically opens. They can still do that, sign contracts, and then they join the club on a certain date. So that can all be done, free agents, more so than anybody else. So keep an eye on that. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on these three individually. And we'll be back on Monday morning for the Leeds news, and then back to this again next Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I'll talk to you later. See ya. Bye.